Here with my cookum, she pushed me to like do my homework, eat food, laugh, take care of each other.
Sometimes I'd even do the twist for her.
I wouldn't be who I am today without you, Cook.
I am Marlene Blyan. I'm a cookum, a mom, a great-grandma. Everything. Everything. Because I didn't really have a family. My grandparents raised me. But I had to earn my keep to live there, which is okay. Taught me how to work. And then when I turned 16, they told me it was time to go. So I came to Lloyd. My aunt picked me up. And then I babysat for people in cleaned houses for people to earn my keep. And then the one lady I went and babysat for, well, two ladies, turned out to be Grandpa's aunties. And that's how I met Grandpa.
My name is Frank Blyan. I'm from Pierceland, Saskatchewan. Grew up in Pierceland, went to school in Pierceland. And lived there all my long, young teenage life, I guess, and left there when I was 17. Well, we had Francine in 1972, and she was born in Pierceland. I mean in Edmonton, sorry. Amanda, 1974. She was born in Lloydminster, and Eli was born in Olivia was born in Olivia. I was born in Lloydminster and Eli. So, if I want to say for my kids, I'm proud of what they've done. I'm proud of them all. They've done all good, and no one's perfect, but yeah, I'm proud of what they do, and they're all doing their thing, and that's the best thing. And they were all pretty good kids.
So yeah, growing up, we always knew that we were mixed ancestry, right? Like Cookum always said, she was half-breed. Grandpa always said he was Métis, right? But we didn't really know a whole lot about the family history because, of course, Grandpa's family, they were in Pierceland, and then Cookum had her connection to Moosomin. And by Moosomin, I mean Moosomin First Nation. And so I didn't know how to reconcile that together with what I knew or how my parents identified, right? Because when you're connected to a First Nation community, most people assume that you're 100% First Nation, that you're treaty, that there's this, and there's a whole host of things that come along with that, right? And so to me, that was very confusing. And of course, that leads to the question of intergenerational trauma and why did they have that, right? The brokenness of the families. And so I didn't learn all the connectors as to why that happened until I connected with Jesse Thistle, who is like a cousin of ours on our Morissette line. So through his research, because he was working on his master's and then working on his PhD, and his focus was on Métis history, right? And he wanted to tell kind of the story of what happened to the Métis. And so he unearthed a lot of stories about Métis families, our family in particular, like especially Selena and her mom, Marianne Morissette, where after 1885, when General Middleton and his troops basically quelled, Louis Riel and Gabriel Dumont, and basically decimated or scattered, like the Métis people, right? They were just pushed out again even more. He said Métis people were lost after that time period. A lot of them just didn't know where they belonged anymore, right? And so when I learned that, I could kind of see that in our family history when I looked back and I looked at, like, well, how did we end up in Moosomin, or how did Cookum's family end up in Moosomin? And basically Selena married into that community, right? Yeah. And I think that happened also with some of her siblings who married into other communities in Saskatchewan, some of them First Nation, some of them Métis, right? And so that's what I kind of discovered. And then, of course, Selena herself, she married someone who also wasn't from Moosomin First Nation originally. His origin story is still unknown, and I don't know if we'll ever find it. In talking to some of Cookum's relatives as well, there might be a connection to other communities in Saskatchewan, but I don't know much more about that, right?
Right.
So yeah, I feel some of that lost identity stems from what happened to our family in 1885 and around that time period, right? Because I also heard other stories from Grandpa's side. So like one of Grandpa's great-grandfathers, Felix Blandian, he when he heard about what was happening in Batoche in Saskatchewan, he actually changed his last name and kind of, I don't want to say went into hiding, but just kind of wanted to blend in and not draw attention to themselves, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like his son, William, he was born a Blandian, but then he changed his name to Blyan, and that's how we ended up with the name Blyan. That was the story that I was told.
My name is Eli Blyan. I'm from Lloydminster, born and raised. I guess family-wise for her and my dad would both consider themselves black sheep of their family. So that was different. Well, because my mom wasn't raised by her mom. She was raised by her grandmother. And so she was looked after, the way she says, she was kept safe. But then a lot of things that even kids in the same household or, she didn't get the same. But, like she said, she was kept safe, but not any like loving extras that a child would get from parents, She's always been a hard worker, made sure through all the struggles that our family was going with, she was always making sure we were looked after, Somehow, some way she always did it, Yeah, and I don't know, I don't have any complaints at all about my upbringing, I wouldn't change it because it made everybody who they are today, and I don't think any of us are lacking. We've been through things, but that's the point of it, go through struggles and keep, making it through, getting stronger, and then moving on to the next, and just try and make a good life for yourself, be happy. Number one thing, I think, well, from my understanding of things, is the point is to be happy and have joy, I guess that's early stuff, eh? And then I guess through time, it's just been the same. It's just that they themselves have built themselves up pretty good, considering where they started, Worked pretty hard, both of them, with all their personal struggles like everybody in the world has. But, they kept overcoming and just never giving up, and they're doing okay now. My mom and my dad. But yeah, she's definitely a hard worker and cares for her kids. You know, like any parent, wasn't perfect, made her mistakes, but can't blame somebody for mistakes. You know, she learned from them and is a good person now.
I believe in God. And I don't believe some of the things that the churches have done to people, because I did go to residential school 1 year. And my grandfather worked really hard to try and get a bus system at the reserve so that we wouldn't have to go back. And he did. So I only went for 1 year. But even there, you learned, you know, there was some kind people that worked there. Some of them were pretty mean. But there was this one nun, she was really tiny. She used to have to stand on a stool. And if it was her turn to look after our area, she would always read us a bedtime story.
What she's taught me about faith is that she does have it. Always saying, like, in times where, like, say any of us were down a darker path or just a more troubled path, she was always praying, you know, praying that we'd be looked after. And then I can think of, you know, nights that I had, you know, nothing ever, well, I guess too crazy, but crazy enough where, you know, anytime an accident could happen or something happens and things don't go right, and could have turned into a bad night. And sometimes you think, knowing that someone was praying when they know you're in those times, and it got you through. Oh yeah, she definitely does have a strong faith. And then once I found what I believe in, I do too. So I guess she was a good example of faith, because even though I bounced around a little bit finding what I believe in, my faith, I'm very strong in it now too. Very strong. Like unwavering, you know. So yeah, she definitely taught me faith, I guess.
Hi, I'm Olivia Blyan. I was born in Lloydminster, April 76, to Marlene and Frank Blyan. I grew up in Lloydminster mostly. Growing up in a mixed family, you know, up until I started school, I never noticed any differences. It wasn't until I started kindergarten that kids would be like, "You're ugly, you're adopted, your white family didn't want you." And like, that traumatized me, because I didn't notice the color of skin or me being different until kindergarten. And I'd come home crying, telling my parents what the kids at school were saying, you know, like, "Am I adopted? No, you're not adopted." Stuff like that. Yeah, it was really traumatic. Kids were so cruel. Kids were so mean. So mean. And then I think when I was about 10, my mom picked me up from school, and it was early. She took me out of school early, and she said, you know how you're always asking if, like, I'm your mom and dad's your dad? I said, yeah. And she goes, well, you have a different dad than the rest of your siblings. And at first, I was kind of excited because I always, like, once the differences were pointed out, like, it just made me question, and I felt like my family was lying to me. And we went to a restaurant, I think it was Bonanza at the time, and she introduced me to my biological father. He didn't want anything to do with me unless my mom was in the picture. So that sucked, because I'd phone him wanting him to come and see me, or wanting to go live with him, because growing up with my mom, my dad, like my dad that I knew growing up was always gone working, and he was never home, so it was mostly just my mom, and she was not kind to me. Getting older, I started acting out, especially after I found out that I had a different dad. My world shrank. Community, my experience with community was racist and mean. And then in my family, I felt alone because I didn't have the same dad as my siblings. Yeah, I was really alone from a very young age. Like, yeah, I lived with my family, but my mom treated me different. Looking back on it now, with the knowledge that I have, my mom was the only sibling that had a different dad growing up from her siblings. I would try calling my dad to come get me, crying because my mom started getting really mean and getting really frustrated with me because of my acting out. And I was sent to a foster home, I think probably shortly after I found out what was going on with my bio dad. I don't know. She treated me so much differently. And, like, I understand now, but it's, when you're a kid, you don't, I was always used to wonder what was wrong with me. Like, why did I get sent here? Why did I get sent there? And that really messed with my head for a long time. Like, I'm still dealing with some of the wounds from my childhood. It's a generational thing. What my mom went through growing up in being a mixed or half-breed in her family, what her siblings would say to her, and how after residential school she was ostracized by her family because she spoke different, right? Her Cree was broken because of the language loss. And then coming into a rural community like Lloydminster, the racism that she probably faced and the trauma from that, kind of repeated the cycle of abuse, I guess. I don't know. But I just know that I have to forgive her someday. I have a hard time with that, because I have now some of that anger and pain to process. And it's not easy, because some days are good, some days are bad. You know, some days it feels like I'm over a lot of stuff. And then some days it just comes back. And it hurts all over again. Let people be who they are. Let people be who they are without trying to fix them or changing who you are to get them to like you. Just be yourself. The right people will come into your life. To help you, to mold you, to teach you, to accept you, meet you where you are. I tried so hard for so long to get people to like me and accept me. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. You know, the good, bad, and indifferent. Be proud of who you are. And where you come from and the things that have shaped you and molded you. And learn to forgive. Let go. Acceptance is huge. Of self, other people, the world, and your place in it.
Oh my gosh, what would I tell myself? When I think of my life, I guess things probably wouldn't have changed much. You know, even if I could go back and give myself advice, because things were different at that time, you know. And like young people now have the opportunity to go to school and go to university, be whatever they want to be, you know. And back then, sometimes by 16, it was time for you to go, or then the only jobs you could get is doing dishes or babysitting, and yeah, it was hard being a young parent because you don't know everything. But I'm glad I met Grandpa's auntie and was babysitting for her. That's how I met Grandpa. And I wouldn't have you guys.
No, you can't go running. No, you can't.